Nathan, Tyler, Emily, and Rachel booked their Airbnb in Portland, Oregon, they thought they had scored an incredible deal. The house was in Forest Park, surrounded by towering trees, misty trails, and a deep silence that felt both peaceful and eerie. It wasn't a luxury stay, but for a last-minute trip, the price was too good to pass up. The listing described it as a cozy rustic cabin with forest views. The pictures showed an old wooden house, slightly worn but charming. The host, Linda, assured them it was safe, though she warned, "It's a bit isolated, but that's part of the charm, right?" They arrived in the late afternoon just before sunset. The house looked exactly like the pictures, quaint, surrounded by dense woods, but something about it felt off. The door was secured by a simple wooden latch, like something you'd see in an old barn. No deadbolt, no security system, just a small carved block of wood keeping the door shut. Rachel raised an eyebrow. "That's our security system?" Tyler shrugged. "Hey, it's Portland. Maybe people are just chill here." Nathan laughed. "Or maybe it's because no one in their right mind would stay out here." They brushed off the uneasiness. It was just one weekend. How bad could it be? The first night went by smoothly, but as the days passed, strange things started happening. Rachel, always the first to wake up, noticed something odd. The bathroom floor was wet every morning, but she was the only one who had showered. At first, she thought the others were just messy, but Emily swore she hadn't used the shower at all. Then there was the Wi-Fi issue. Every night, at exactly 2 a.m., the connection would cut out completely. It wasn't just slow. It was like someone switched it off manually. One afternoon, Nathan went to grab his phone charger and found it moved to a different room. He was sure he had left it in the living room, but now it was by the kitchen sink. Nobody had touched it. The tension in the house started to grow. The small, odd details weren't enough to make them leave, but they were enough to make them uneasy. Then, on the second to last night, the first real warning sign appeared. They returned from dinner in downtown Portland to find the back door slightly open. Tyler frowned. "I locked that." Rachel checked her phone flashlight and saw muddy footprints just inside the doorway. The room fell silent. A heavy silence filled the cabin. Nathan stepped forward cautiously and nudged the door open wider. The wooden latch, the only thing keeping them safe at night, was missing. It hadn't fallen off. It was gone. Rachel swallowed hard. Someone was in here. Emily pulled out her phone and started recording. "Check our stuff. See if anything's missing." They moved carefully through the house, checking every room, every drawer. Nothing was out of place. Their bags, wallets, passports, all untouched. But that didn't make sense. "Why would someone break in and not take anything?" Tyler muttered. Nathan exhaled, trying to think. Maybe the wind blew it open. Maybe the latch was loose. But he didn't believe that. The footprints said otherwise. They searched the entire house, but no one was inside. Still, the idea that a stranger had been there, maybe still watching them, made their skin crawl. They blocked the door with a chair and agreed to sleep in one room together that night. And then, at exactly 2 a.m., the Wi-Fi cut out again. And this time, they heard footsteps outside. Nathan lay in bed staring at the ceiling, heart pounding. The footsteps were slow, deliberate. Crunch, crunch. Someone was walking just beyond the porch. Rachel whispered, "Did you hear that?" Tyler sat up, rubbing his face. "Someone's out there." Emily, shaking, turned off her phone's flashlight and peeked out the window. And that's when she saw him. A figure standing just beyond the tree line, partially hidden in the shadows. Tall, thin, completely still. Emily barely breathed. "There's a guy outside." Nathan joined her at the window. The man wasn't moving, just standing there, watching. Then, as if sensing them, he tilted his head slowly, almost curiously. Nathan grabbed his phone, fingers shaking, and snapped a photo. The flash illuminated the woods for half a second, and in that second the man moved, a sickeningly fast lunge, disappearing deeper into the trees. Too fast for a normal person. Emily gasped, stepping back. What the hell was that? Tyler grabbed a kitchen knife. We're leaving. First thing in the morning. But they weren't going to make it that far. The group sat huddled in the living room, every light in the house turned on. No one dared to sleep. Rachel kept glancing at the back door, where the wooden latch had once been. Nathan gripped his phone, refreshing the screen over and over, waiting for the Wi-Fi to come back. It didn't. 2:37 a.m. Emily whispered, "Do you think he's still out there?" As if in response, something creaked outside. Nathan's breath caught in his throat. It wasn't footsteps. It wasn't the wind. It was the porch steps bending under weight. Someone was standing right outside the front door. Tyler tightened his grip on the kitchen knife. Rachel covered her mouth, her chest rising and falling in silent panic. Then, a soft click. The doorknob turned. The doorknob twisted again. Slow, deliberate. Nathan's stomach knotted with pure terror. The only thing stopping whoever was outside from coming in was the chair they had shoved under the handle. Emily grabbed her phone and turned on the video. The doorknob stopped. Silence. And then, a loud, sharp knock. Rachel squeezed her eyes shut. One knock, then two, then three. Rhythmic, almost playful. Nathan swallowed hard. Who's there?" His voice barely came out. A voice from the other side of the door whispered, "Forgot something." Emily gasped. Tyler's eyes widened as he saw something on the floor, the wooden latch. It had been slid under the door from the outside. Nathan's blood turned ice cold. The man had taken it and brought it back. Tyler lunged forward, pushing against the chair blocking the door. "We need to get the hell out of here." But then, a second voice. Outside, somewhere near the back of the house, another voice called out in a whisper, "They're still inside." And just like that, they realized there was more than one of them. Nathan's pulse thundered in his ears. His mind screamed, "Run!" Tyler grabbed Emily's wrist. "We're going. Now!" Rachel's hands trembled as she fumbled for the window latch. "We can jump from the second floor, it's not that high." Another knock at the door, harder this time, more urgent. Then the sound of footsteps, fast, circling the house. They weren't waiting anymore. Nathan yanked the window open. Cold air rushed in. Below them, nothing but darkness and the damp forest floor. "Go, go, go!" Tyler hissed. Rachel went first, dropping into the night. Emily followed. Nathan hesitated, then heard the unmistakable sound of the front door cracking under force. They were breaking in. Nathan jumped. He hit the ground hard, pain shooting up his leg. No time to think about it. Tyler was right behind him. They ran. Through the trees. Through the suffocating dark. Behind them, footsteps, fast, unnatural. Rachel sobbed, her breath hitching as she ran. Where do we go?" Then, headlights. A car. A road. Nathan burst from the woods, nearly collapsing onto the pavement. The car screeched to a stop, horn blaring. A man inside rolled down the window. "Jesus, are you guys okay?" Rachel spun around. The woods behind them were empty. Silent. Like no one had ever been there. The police arrived minutes later. They searched the house. No signs of forced entry, no footprints, like the intruders had vanished into thin air. Then the officers checked the basement. Nathan and the others stood outside, still shaken, as they heard one of the cops swear under his breath. The door creaked open. Inside, a small mattress, food wrappers, and dozens of phone chargers. Someone had been living there. For how long? Nobody knew. The Airbnb listing was taken down the next day. Linda, the host, vanished. Disconnected her number, deleted her profile. She had known. She had to. But the worst part? Days later, when Nathan checked his phone, the Wi-Fi had reconnected, and someone had tried to log into his account at 2 a.m. I should have trusted my instincts. The moment I saw that house, something felt off. It was supposed to be the perfect last stop on our road trip, one final night in San Diego before catching our flight home. My best friend Ryan and I had been driving down the California coast, hopping from city to city, soaking up the last days of summer. We found a great deal on an Airbnb. Cozy stay before your flight. Beautiful view, private pool, secure location. It had solid reviews and the price was unbeatable. A little too good to be true, but we figured we just got lucky. The moment we pulled into the long driveway, though, something about the house unsettled me. It was isolated, surrounded by tall iron gates, and had two massive guard dogs pacing along the fence. It didn't look like the bright, inviting place in the listing photos. Our host, Miguel, was already waiting at the entrance. A tall man in his 50s with tanned skin, deep-set eyes, and a sharp, unreadable expression. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "You made it," he said. His voice was smooth but cold. Ryan, always the friendly one, stepped forward to shake his hand. I noticed Miguel didn't grip it very firmly. He just held it for a second too long, like he was studying Ryan. "The house is all yours," Miguel said, leading us inside. "Make yourselves at home." The interior was dimly lit, the air stale like no one had stayed here in a while. Thick, heavy curtains covered the windows. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. "This place is sick," Ryan said, dropping his backpack onto the couch. "Dude, check out the pool." Through the sliding glass doors, I saw the pool glowing under dim blue lights. It looked inviting, but something about the backyard felt wrong. The property backed into a deep canyon, nothing but darkness stretching beyond the fence. "You boys drink?" Miguel asked. His voice startled me. We turned to see him holding a bottle of tequila and two glasses. I hesitated. Not really." Ryan nudged me. "Come on, one drink." Miguel's smile grew wider. "Good, I insist." I took a small sip, enough to be polite. Ryan, on the other hand, downed his glass in one go. Miguel chuckled. "I like you." We sat on the patio making small talk. Miguel wasn't exactly friendly, but he was polite. Still, something about him felt off. The way he asked too many personal questions, how he never blinked much, how his fingers kept tapping against his glass, like he was thinking about something else. "So where else have you stayed?" he asked. "We've been all over, Santa Cruz, Monterey, LA, Ryan said, leaning back. "Mostly hotels, but we like Airbnbs. Feels more personal, you know?" Miguel nodded slowly. "Yes, more personal." Silence. I cleared my throat. "And you, Miguel? How long have you been hosting?" He tilted his head. "A long time. People come and go. Some stay longer than others." Ryan laughed, not noticing the way Miguel was watching him. "Yeah, man, it's crazy how many people do Airbnb now. You probably meet all kinds of folks." Miguel smiled. "Yes, all kinds." I suddenly felt cold. Something moved in the darkness beyond the fence. A shadow shifting at the edge of the canyon. I sat up, trying to focus, but Miguel's voice cut through my thoughts. "You two should get some rest," he said, standing abruptly. "Big day tomorrow." Ryan yawned. "Yeah, good call." As we headed to our room, I couldn't shake the feeling that Miguel was watching us, and that something or someone was watching from outside. I barely slept that night. The house was eerily silent, but every now and then I thought I heard something. A faint creaking sound, footsteps just outside our door, a whisper too soft to make out. Maybe it was just my nerves. Maybe I was overthinking. At some point I must have drifted off, because the next thing I knew, Ryan was shaking me awake. "Dude," he whispered, "wake up." I groggily sat up. "What?" Ryan's face was pale. "I heard something. In the hallway." I listened. "Nothing. Bro, go back to sleep," I muttered, lying back down. But then, I heard it. A soft click, like a door being shut carefully. We locked eyes. Ryan grabbed his phone, turned on the flashlight, and slowly pushed the bedroom door open. The hallway was empty, but the air felt heavier, stale, like someone had been standing there just moments before. Then, we saw it. A door at the end of the hall was slightly open. I swear it had been closed before. Ryan whispered, "That door wasn't open earlier, right?" I shook my head. I should have said, "Let's just go back to bed." I should have ignored it. But instead, we tiptoed forward, hearts pounding. Ryan pushed the door open just enough to peek inside. At first, it looked like a normal storage room, shelves stacked with old boxes. But then I noticed the back wall. A row of small security monitors blinked in the darkness. My stomach dropped. Ryan stepped inside, aiming his flashlight at the screens. "No way," he breathed. The monitors were showing live footage of the house. One screen displayed the kitchen, another, the living room. One pointed at the backyard, and then we saw the worst one, a camera feed of our bedroom. Ryan's voice shook. "What the hell?" We both turned at the same time toward the door. Miguel was standing there, watching. For a moment, none of us moved. Then Miguel smiled. "Ah," he said. "You found my security room." Ryan and I were frozen. Miguel stepped forward, completely blocking the doorway. His presence filled the entire room. "It's for safety," he said, as if that explained anything. "You know, people steal, lie. I have to protect myself." Ryan forced a laugh. "Yeah, man, makes sense." Miguel didn't blink. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Sorry, we didn't mean to snoop. We just heard a noise." Miguel finally moved. Just a little. Enough for us to slip past him if we acted fast. Then he said something that made my skin crawl. "You should be careful," he murmured. "Some places, you never leave." The way he said it, it wasn't a warning. It was a promise. Ryan and I squeezed past him, trying to act casual, but every muscle in my body was screaming, "Run!" Back in our room, we locked the door and whispered frantically. "We need to leave," Ryan said. I nodded. First thing in the morning. But something in me whispered, "We might not make it that long." We didn't sleep. Every creak, every rustle outside made my pulse spike. Miguel knew we saw the cameras. He knew we were scared. And I had no doubt that he enjoyed it. Around 3 a.m., Ryan whispered, "Screw this. We're leaving now." I agreed. We quietly gathered our things and tiptoed to the door. I turned the knob as slowly as possible to avoid making a sound. Click, unlocked. But the moment we stepped into the hallway, we heard it. A metallic clinking sound. Ryan's hand tightened around my arm. What was that? We inched toward the front door. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear anything else. Then in the dim glow of the kitchen light, I saw it. A thick, rusted chain looped through the door handles, locked shut with a padlock. Miguel had locked us in. And then, his voice from the darkness. "Leaving so soon?" We spun around. Miguel stood in the living room holding a massive hunting knife. His expression was calm, almost amused. "You boys should relax," he said, tilting his head. "You've got nowhere to go." Ryan took a step back. "Look, man, Miguel cut him off. "Let's make a deal," he said. "I'll give you one chance." He pointed to the backyard. "You make it to the canyon, you go free." I felt sick. Ryan whispered, "He's messing with us." But then, Miguel pulled out a whistle, blew it once, and the guard dogs outside started barking like crazy. "You have 1 minute," Miguel said. "Run." We ran. We sprinted through the house, yanked open the sliding door, and bolted into the backyard. The dogs were already charging. I could hear their claws scraping the ground, their snarls growing louder. Ryan vaulted over a low fence. I followed, barely landing on my feet. Ahead of us, the canyon stretched into darkness. "Go!" Ryan yelled. We stumbled downhill, branches slashing at our arms. Behind us, Miguel was laughing, actually laughing. Then, I saw something, a wooden door half buried in the dirt. "What is that?" I gasped. Ryan yanked it open. A tunnel, a disgusting damp tunnel leading underground. We didn't think. We just jumped inside and pulled the door shut behind us. Total silence. We could hear Miguel's footsteps above, the dogs pacing, but he didn't find the door. After what felt like hours, the footsteps faded. We crawled through the tunnel until it opened into a field behind a gas station. We ran inside, breathless, begging for help. The cops came, they searched the house. Miguel was gone. The only thing they found? A dozen old ID cards, some from missing travelers, and a message carved into the tunnel wall. Some places you never leave. My name is Rachel Carter, and I've always loved solo trips. There's something freeing about exploring a new city at my own pace, taking in the sights, and just existing in a place where no one knows me. A few months ago, I booked a cheap but well-located Airbnb in uptown Chicago, a lively area with historic buildings, bars, and a bit of a rough edge. The apartment had great reviews, and the photos made it look modern and cozy. The price was almost too good to be true, but I figured the owner, Lauren, was just trying to compete with the expensive listings nearby. I arrived late in the afternoon, picked up the key from a lockbox outside, and made my way up to the third floor. That's when I noticed how run down the building actually was. The hallway smelled like damp carpet and cigarette smoke, and the elevator creaked loudly as it carried me up. When I unlocked the door and stepped inside, the Airbnb looked exactly like the photos, except for one thing. There was a faint, musty smell, like old wood and something slightly off. It wasn't unbearable, just unexpected. I brushed it off as the scent of an old building and locked the door behind me. Being extra cautious, I made sure to lock all three locks, the deadbolt, the handle lock, and the chain. Traveling alone meant I had to be extra careful. That first night was peaceful. But the next night, things got weird. I woke up at 2:48 a.m. to a sound that made my stomach drop. The sound of a key turning in the lock. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but then I heard the deadbolt click. My heart pounded as I sat up in bed, barely breathing. The chain lock was still latched, thank God, but I could see the door handle moving slightly, as if someone was testing it. I grabbed my phone, ready to call 911, but after 5 long seconds, the movement stopped. Silence. I waited, listening. My skin felt cold, my heartbeat hammering in my ears. After another minute, I forced myself to crawl out of bed, grabbing the nearest thing I could use as a weapon, a metal water bottle. Slowly, I approached the door and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty, but the worst part? The deadbolt was unlocked. Someone had actually used a key to get inside. At that moment, a horrible realization hit me. Whoever it was, they weren't just testing random doors. They knew this was my apartment. I barely slept the rest of the night. Every tiny sound made me flinch. Pipes creaking, distant footsteps in the hallway, even the wind rattling the old windows. My mind raced with questions. Who had a key to this apartment? Was it the owner? A previous tenant? Or someone worse? By morning, I was exhausted but determined to get answers. I texted Lauren, the Airbnb host, telling her exactly what had happened. She called me immediately. "Rachel, I swear no one else has a key. I had the locks changed when I bought the place 6 months ago. Only you and I have the code to the lockbox." That didn't make me feel any better. Someone had a key and they had tried to get in while I was sleeping. I asked if any previous guests had mentioned something similar. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then she sighed. "Okay. There was one other guest before you. She messaged me about strange noises like someone trying the door at night, but she only stayed 2 nights before leaving. I thought she was overreacting." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Lauren, did you ever meet the person who lived here before you bought the place?" Another pause. "No. The guy who owned it before just disappeared. Stopped paying the building fees. The landlord had to get legal clearance to sell it. Why?" I looked toward the door. My deadbolt was still unlocked from the night before, because I think someone still believes this is their apartment. That night, I triple-checked the locks, wedged a chair under the door handle, and slept with my phone in my hand. I thought I was being paranoid. I had no idea how much worse it was going to get. At 2:41 a.m., I woke up to a different sound. Not the lock this time. Something closer, inside the apartment. It was a faint, rhythmic creak, like slow footsteps on wood. I held my breath, my body frozen. The sound was coming from the kitchen, just outside my bedroom door. I hadn't heard the door open. The chain lock was still latched. So how the hell was someone inside? I forced myself to grab my phone and open the camera. I had to see. I turned on the screen, angling it toward the narrow gap under the bedroom door. The dim glow barely illuminated the hallway, but then a shadow moved across the light. Someone was standing right outside my door. I couldn't scream, couldn't move. I just stared at the phone screen, praying I was imagining it. But then, the worst part. The shadow leaned down. Whoever it was, they were looking under the door too. And then, in a low, breathy voice, they whispered, "You're not supposed to be here." I don't remember how long I sat there, frozen in place, staring at the dim glow of my phone screen. My brain refused to process what was happening. Someone was inside my apartment. Someone was watching me through the gap under the door. And worst of all, they had spoken. I had to do something. Now. Moving as slowly as possible, I reached for the heaviest thing nearby, my bedside lamp. My hands were shaking, but I gripped it tight, forcing myself to breathe quietly. Then, I did something incredibly stupid. I kicked the door. Not hard enough to break it, but hard enough to send a message. I knew they were there. For one long, unbearable second, nothing happened. No footsteps, no whispering, no movement. And then, silence. I didn't hear them walk away. I didn't hear the door open or close. Whoever was out there had just disappeared. Still gripping my lamp, I waited another minute before forcing myself to move. I grabbed my phone, fumbling with the screen as I called 911. The dispatcher picked up immediately. 911, what's your emergency? I whispered into the receiver, my voice barely audible. There's someone inside my Airbnb. They were just outside my bedroom door. Are you in a safe location? I wanted to scream. Of course I wasn't. I'm locked in my room, but I don't know if they're still here. Stay on the line. Officers are on the way. The seconds crawled by. I listened, straining my ears for any sound, any sign of movement. But the apartment was completely silent. And then, I heard it. A faint click. I turned my head slowly toward the bedroom door. The handle wasn't moving. The floor wasn't creaking. The sound had come from the front door. Whoever had been inside had just left. By the time the police arrived, I was still shaking. I met them at the door, clutching my phone like a lifeline. The two officers, Detective Ryan Holloway and his partner, Officer Delgado, took my statement while checking every inch of the apartment. No signs of forced entry, no footprints, no evidence that anyone else had been inside. But I knew what I had seen. I knew what I had heard. Detective Holloway frowned. Are you absolutely sure the locks were engaged before you went to bed? Yes, I checked them twice. He exchanged a look with his partner before turning back to me. We checked the security cameras in the hallway. You were the only person who entered this apartment tonight. That didn't make sense. That wasn't possible. I felt my stomach twist as the detective continued. There's one more thing. Your front door was still locked when we got here. Deadbolt, chain, everything. I stared at him, my mind spinning. That's not possible, I whispered. They were inside. I saw their shadow. I heard them speak. Detective Holloway exhaled. He looked troubled, but also like he had seen things like this before. Then we need to figure out how they got in. He gestured toward the kitchen. You might want to sit down for this. Detective Holloway led me to the kitchen, his face unreadable. His partner, Officer Delgado, stood near the counter, shining his flashlight at something. "We found this behind the fridge," Holloway said, stepping aside. I followed his gaze and felt my stomach drop. There, barely visible in the dim light, was a small, square opening in the wall, a hidden crawl space. It was just big enough for someone to squeeze through. My breath caught in my throat. No way. No, that wasn't there before. "You probably never noticed," Holloway said. "Most people wouldn't. It's built into the original structure of the building. The previous owner may have used it for storage or something else." Delgado crouched near the opening, shining his light inside. "It leads into the walls. There's enough space back here for someone to move between apartments." A cold, sinking feeling spread through me. "So you're telling me someone has been in there, watching me?" Neither of them answered right away. Then Holloway sighed. "I think someone never left." I took a shaky step back, my head spinning. I thought about the whisper through my bedroom door, the footsteps, the door unlocking itself. I thought about Lauren's story, the original owner who disappeared. "Arthur Klein," I murmured. Holloway nodded. "Yeah, the guy who owned this place. He was reported missing, but no body was ever found. No belongings left behind. He just vanished." He paused, but I don't think he actually left. A heavy silence filled the room. "We're going to search the entire crawl space," Delgado said. "If there's someone hiding back there, we'll find them." I didn't want to wait around to see what they found. I packed my bags in record time, threw everything into my suitcase, and walked out of that apartment for the last time. I didn't even look back. A week later, I got a call from Detective Holloway. "We found something," he said, his voice low. I gripped my phone tighter. "What was it?" "A mattress, old food wrappers, clothes." I swallowed hard. Whoever was in there, they were living in the walls. I felt my skin crawl. "Did you catch them?" There was a long pause. "No," Holloway admitted. "The space extends further than we thought. There are multiple access points. By the time we got in there, they were already gone." I closed my eyes. Gone. That meant they could still be there, watching, waiting for the next guest to check in. I deleted my Airbnb account that night, and I have never ever stayed in one again. We needed a break. Work, deadlines, the constant noise of the city. It was all getting to us. So when Derek suggested a weekend camping trip at Olympic National Park, I agreed without hesitation. The drive was long but scenic, the endless trees stretching toward the sky like silent guardians. We stopped at a small gas station just outside the park, where an old man behind the counter eyed us with mild curiosity. "Camping, huh?" he muttered, handing back Derek's credit card. "Yeah, just for the weekend," Derek replied. The man hesitated. "Be careful out there." His words lingered in my mind as we drove off, but I brushed them aside. The campsite was nearly empty when we arrived. There was another tent set up a little ways off, but we never saw who it belonged to. As the sun dipped behind the trees, we settled in, enjoying the peaceful stillness of the forest. At around 2 a.m., I woke up. Something had pulled me from sleep. A sound. A presence. Then I heard it. Soft, deliberate footsteps crunching the leaves outside our tent. I held my breath, straining to listen. The steps weren't moving, just standing, watching. Slowly, I reached for my phone. As the screen lit up, I saw it, a dark silhouette standing just beyond the tent's fabric. My stomach dropped. "Derek," I whispered, nudging him awake. His groggy mumbling must have startled whatever was out there because, in an instant, the figure slipped away into the trees. Derek grabbed a flashlight and unzipped the tent. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing only the empty forest. No footsteps, no sound. "Probably an animal," he muttered. but I saw the look in his eyes. He didn't believe that either. We tried to sleep after that, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something, was still out there, watching. By the time the sun rose, the fear from the night before felt almost irrational. Almost. Derek tried to convince me it had just been a stray camper or maybe even my imagination, but I knew what I saw. That shadow, it was real. Still, we decided to stay. We'd come all this way, and leaving over some creepy late-night encounter felt ridiculous. That night we sat by the fire, letting the crackling flames push back the darkness. The forest was eerily quiet, like it was holding its breath. Then, around 1 a.m., I woke up again. But this time it wasn't footsteps that pulled me from sleep. It was a car engine. I stiffened, listening as the low rumble grew closer. Through the thin tent fabric, I could see faint beams of light cutting through the trees. Derek stirred beside me. "What is it?" I didn't answer, just motioned for him to listen. The car came to a stop right outside our campsite. The headlights didn't turn on. No doors opened. No voices. Just silence. I grabbed Derek's wrist, squeezing tight. Who the hell drives into a campground in the middle of the night and just sits there? Seconds stretched into minutes. Then, click. The headlights blazed to life, flooding our tent with blinding white light. Derek sat up fast, heart pounding. "We need to go." The second he spoke, the car suddenly revved its engine and sped off, disappearing into the woods. We didn't sleep after that. We didn't even stay in the tent. Instead, we crawled into the car, locked the doors, and waited for morning. But morning didn't come fast enough. At 4 a.m., just as exhaustion was setting in, we saw it. The car, it was back. It rolled silently into the same spot, its headlights off, engine purring like some kind of predator waiting for its moment. I gripped a kitchen knife we'd packed, my hands trembling. Derek stared at the vehicle, whispering, "What do they want?" Then, without warning, the driver flicked on the headlights, aiming them directly at our car. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then the car's engine roared, the headlights flashing brighter, and just like that, it was gone again. We stayed awake until the first hint of sunlight hit the trees, then packed up as fast as humanly possible. We weren't staying another night. The drive out of the campsite felt endless. Every turn in the road, every shadow in the trees, it all felt wrong. We didn't talk much. There was nothing left to say. Whatever had happened that night, we weren't going to wait around to understand it. The park's exit gate was still closed. It wouldn't open until 6 a.m. We were trapped. Derek kept the car running, fingers drumming nervously against the steering wheel. I kept looking back, convinced that at any second that car would return. And then, a distant rumble. My heart froze. Headlights appeared down the road, growing closer, closer, closer. It was them. Derek's grip on the wheel tightened. If they stop, I'm ramming through the gate. But they didn't stop. The car slowed, crawling past us like a hunter sizing up its prey. For the first time, I saw inside. A dark figure sat behind the wheel, completely still. No expression, no reaction, just watching. Then, so slowly it sent a chill down my spine, the driver raised one hand and waved. A cold, mechanical wave, like he was saying goodbye. Then the car sped up and disappeared down the road. Minutes later, the park gate opened and we floored it out of there. Back home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't finished. I started digging, searching for anything about strange activity in Olympic National Park. And that's when I found it. A string of missing campers, all vanishing from the same area. Each case had one detail in common. A car, no headlights, a silent driver. My stomach dropped. I scrolled further. One of the police reports included a blurry surveillance photo. It was him, the driver. I clicked on the article, expecting some kind of closure, an arrest, a suspect, something. But there was nothing. The final line of the report stopped me cold. The suspect was never identified. The vehicle was never found. and the missing were never seen again. I slammed my laptop shut, my chest tightening. We had escaped, but something told me we had just been lucky. Because not everyone gets to leave, and some people aren't meant to be found. I should have known something was wrong the moment we pulled up to the house. It was an old Victorian mansion, the kind you see in faded photographs from the 1800s. 3 stories tall, with an iron gate that barely hung on its hinges, and windows so dark they looked like empty eye sockets staring into nothing. It was supposed to be a weekend getaway. Just me, Lisa, Derek, Ashley, Oliver, and Tom. Salem, Massachusetts seemed like the perfect place to rent a creepy Airbnb, tell ghost stories, and laugh about it later. Except, something about this house didn't feel funny. Lisa stood by the trunk of the car, staring at the place like she was about to be sick. "You okay?" I asked. She swallowed hard. "Yeah, just got a weird feeling." Derek scoffed. "Oh, come on. It's an old house. That's the whole point." Ashley grabbed her bags, already heading for the front door. "Let's just get inside. I'm freezing." We were supposed to meet the host, but no one was there. Just an old key sitting under a moldy welcome mat. Lisa hesitated before stepping inside. "Something's off," she muttered. I should have listened to her. The house smelled like dust and something faintly metallic, like the scent of an old attic that hadn't been opened in years. The place had been renovated, but whoever did it kept a lot of the original furniture. Heavy wooden chairs, a grand piano covered in a sheet, and paintings whose eyes seemed to follow you when you walked past them. Derek dumped his bag on the couch. "All right, who's taking what room?" Lisa and I got the first-floor bedroom. Ashley and Oliver took the second. Tom and Derek took the attic because, of course, the 2 idiots wanted the creepiest room in the house. It was only after we settled in that things started feeling wrong. That night, I woke up to a thud from upstairs. At first, I thought it was Derek or Tom messing around, but then I heard it again. Heavy footsteps, pacing. I sat up, listening. Lisa was out cold. The footsteps moved, slow and deliberate, across the ceiling. Then I heard it, something dragging, like nails scratching across the floorboards. And then the worst part. From the hallway right outside our room, I heard a voice. It sounded just like Lisa. "Hey, come outside." My blood turned to ice. Lisa was right next to me. The voice outside whispered again. "Come on, I'm waiting." I stayed frozen, holding my breath until the voice faded into silence. I barely slept after that, and that was just the first night. The next morning, I barely touched my coffee. Lisa noticed. "You look like hell." I didn't sleep, I admitted. "I heard something. It sounded like you." She frowned. "Me?" I nodded. It was outside our door, whispering. It sounded exactly like you, Lisa. But I knew it wasn't. Before she could respond, Ashley dropped into the chair next to us, rubbing her arms. "Okay, did anyone hear weird noises last night?" Derek snorted. "We're in an old house, Ash. Creaky floors, bad plumbing, probably rats." "It wasn't rats," Ashley shot back. "I woke up to someone whispering my name, thought it was Oliver, but when I turned over, he was dead asleep." I exchanged a glance with Lisa. Oliver groaned, running a hand through his hair. "We probably just freaked ourselves out. You guys are acting like we're in a horror movie." But we were. We just didn't know it yet. By the second night, things got worse. Lisa and I stayed up late, watching TV in bed. I was exhausted, but the thought of hearing that voice again kept me wired. At around 2:47 a.m., the room suddenly felt ice cold. Lisa reached for the blanket. Jesus, it just got freezing in here. And then, we heard it. A sound, slow and deliberate, from the hallway. Something dragging. Not footsteps, not creaks. Something heavy being pulled across the floorboards. Lisa grabbed my wrist. "Tell me you hear that." I nodded. "Yeah, I do. We didn't move. The dragging sound stopped right in front of our door. And then, knock, knock, knock. My stomach twisted. Lisa's grip tightened. Another knock. 3 slow, deliberate taps. I was about to whisper something when... Hey, it's me. Open the door. I nearly stopped breathing. The voice was mine. Lisa's nails dug into my arm. Don't open it, she mouthed. The voice outside repeated itself. Open up, it's just me. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. Then the doorknob started to turn. Lisa scrambled off the bed, grabbed my arm, and yanked me toward the bathroom. We locked the door just as the bedroom door creaked open. From the crack in the bathroom door, I saw it. A figure standing completely still in our room, not moving, not breathing, just standing there. It was me. Same clothes, same face, just standing in the dark. I clamped a hand over my mouth to keep from screaming. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the thing turned around, slow, stiff, and walked out of the room. Neither of us slept after that. Morning came, but it didn't feel like morning. The house was heavy, like the air itself was pressing down on us. No one mentioned what happened last night, but I could tell. Everyone felt it. Ashley was the first to break the silence. Where's Tom? We all turned. His spot at the table was empty, his bed untouched. Maybe he went for a walk, Oliver suggested, but his voice lacked conviction. I wasn't convinced either. Lisa was staring at something near the fireplace. What's that? It was a small, leather-bound book, partially wedged into the stonework, like someone had hidden it there years ago. The edges were brittle, the pages yellowed. I pulled it out carefully. The name etched onto the cover sent a shiver down my spine. Margaret Holloway. Who's that? Ashley asked. Oliver frowned. Wait, wasn't Holloway one of the old families here? From like the witch trial era? Lisa took a step back. This place is built on cursed land. I knew it. I flipped open the diary, my fingers shaking. The first few pages were just journal entries, but as I scanned further, the words changed. The mirror must remain covered. It speaks to them. It calls them back. I see their faces at night. They wear our skin. They are not my family anymore. They are not human. I slammed the book shut. We need to find Tom. Now. We spread out, calling his name, checking every room. Nothing. The only place left to check was the basement. Lisa was already shaking her head. Nope, absolutely not. Derek sighed. Come on, we have to look. The basement door was old, too old. Unlike the rest of the house, it hadn't been renovated. The wood was warped, and deep scratch marks lined the surface, like something had tried to claw its way out. Ashley hesitated. What if he's down there? I turned the knob. It wouldn't budge. Then, from the other side of the door, knock, knock, knock. A deep, wet knock like bone against wood. My mouth went dry. Tom? Silence. Then a whisper. Not Tom's voice. Let me out. I took a step back. Ashley's breathing hitched. We need to leave. Derek's jaw tightened. Not without Tom. He grabbed a chair and smashed it against the door. The wood splintered. The hinges groaned. And then... something laughed. Not from behind the door. From above us. We all froze. Slowly, in unison, we turned our heads to the second-floor balcony. Tom was standing there. Or at least, something that looked like him. His face was stretched into a grin too wide for his skin. His eyes, completely black. His clothes hung off his frame like they were too loose. Then, in a slow, jerky motion, he raised his hand and waved. Lisa screamed, and then the lights went out. Total darkness. Lisa was still screaming, but I barely heard her over the pounding in my ears. I fumbled for my phone, but before I could turn on the flashlight, something brushed against my arm. Cold, wet, Wrong. I recoiled, but it was gone. "Everybody stay together," Oliver yelled. A sickly glow flickered from upstairs. Tom was still standing there, but now his head was tilted at an unnatural angle, his grin stretching even wider. And then he moved. Not walked, jerked forward like a puppet being yanked by invisible strings. Ashley grabbed my arm. "We need to get out of here." I barely had time to think before the house lurched. Not an earthquake, something else. The walls shifted, stretching impossibly. The front door was gone. Windows vanished. The house was sealing us inside. And that's when I realized it wasn't haunted. It was alive. The diary's warnings slammed into my mind. They wear our skin. The mirror must remain covered. They are not my family anymore. I turned toward the mirror on the third floor, the one Oliver uncovered on the first day. The reflection wasn't showing the room. It was showing something else. A place of shadows and figures with hollow eyes, watching us from the other side. The thing wearing Tom's face lunged. We ran. Through the kitchen. Down the hallway. The house groaned, stretching and warping around us. A door appeared that hadn't been there before. One that led down. "The basement!" Oliver gasped. "But Tom," Ashley started. "That's not Tom," I snapped. We had no choice. The door slammed shut behind us as we descended. The air down here was wrong. Heavy. Rotten. Like something dead had been sleeping here for a long time. Our phone flashlights flickered, revealing a single wooden chair in the center of the room. Ropes dangled from it. And in the corner, Tom's real body, or what was left of it. His face was slack, eyes sunken, mouth sewn shut. Lisa let out a choked sob. "He was never with us," I whispered. "Not since the first night." A rasping sound echoed behind us. I turned. The other Tom was standing at the top of the stairs, but now his body was melting. The skin sagged, slipping from his face in wet clumps, revealing something underneath. Not bone, not muscle. Something older. Something that had been waiting. And it was smiling at us. It moved fast. We barely had time to react before it lunged. Oliver smashed the diary against its head, but it didn't even flinch. The mirror. I grabbed Lisa's hand. The diary said the mirror is a door. We ran, tripping, scrambling back upstairs. The thing let out a piercing shriek behind us, shaking the walls. The mirror was wide open now, and on the other side, not a reflection. A rotting version of the house filled with people watching us. Not people. Shadows. The original residents. Trapped. Lisa hesitated. Ashley pushed her forward. "We don't have a choice." We jumped through. The air ripped around us, then silence. I woke up outside. The house was gone. Nothing but an empty lot, covered in dead grass. Lisa, Oliver, and Ashley were next to me, staring in horror. We turned. A single cracked mirror sat in the middle of the field, and in its reflection, the house was still standing, and Tom was watching us from the window, still smiling.